I always believed a man proved his love by what he gave up. My mother used to say, honor lasts longer than happiness. I nodded every time. I learned early that silence made peace. Sacrifice made respect. When I married Emma, I promised her stability, not passion. I don't need fireworks, she told me once. I need safety. I smiled and said, then I'll be enough. Our home was quiet. Clean. Careful. We spoke like guests who didn't want to break anything. Lucas was always there. My cousin. My closest blood. You married well, he joked, sitting too close to Emma on the couch. She laughed. I laughed too. Blood didn't betray blood. That was the rule I lived by. One evening, Emma's phone buzzed while we ate dinner. She glanced at the screen, stiffened, and swiped fast. Too fast. Work? I asked. Yes, she said. Just stress. Lucas cut in. You worry too much, Dan? He grinned. Relax. I wanted to ask more. Instead, I said nothing. Silence was easier than doubt. That night, my mother called. Come by, she said. We need to talk. She sat straight when I arrived. My father stayed behind his newspaper. A man protects his family, my mother said. No matter the cost. I frowned. Why are you saying this? She met my eyes. Because sometimes truth destroys more than lies. I felt cold. What are you asking me to protect? Us, she replied. Our name. When I got home, Emma stood by the window. You're late, she said. My mother wanted to talk. Her hands shook. About what? I searched her face. About honor. She swallowed. Daniel, if something ever happened, would you still choose family? Lucas's words echoed in my head. Relax. Don't worry. I forced a smile. Of course. She turned away quickly. Too quickly. I noticed the phone again, face down now. Did you delete something earlier? I asked. Her voice cracked. Why are you asking that? I just noticed. She laughed, sharp and short. You imagine things. I wanted to believe her. I needed to. Okay, I said. Later, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling. Emma faced the wall. I whispered, I trust you. She didn't answer. I thought of my mother's words. A real man protects family. I repeated it like a prayer. I didn't know I was making a promise that would cage me. I closed my eyes, holding on to silence, unaware it was already tightening around my throat. I didn't sleep. Every sound felt louder than it should. The clock ticked like a warning. I turned toward Emma again. If you're hiding something, I said softly, tell me now. She stayed still. You're tired, she replied. Go to sleep. I can't, I said. Something feels wrong. She sighed. You always overthink. Do you still trust me? I asked. Her pause lasted too long. Why are you doing this? Because I need to hear it. She whispered, yes. The word felt thin. I rolled onto my back. In my head, I argued with myself. Blood doesn't lie. Wives don't cross lines. Mothers don't mislead sons. I built walls out of beliefs and called them safety. The next morning, Lucas texted me. Breakfast later? He wrote. I stared at the message. My fingers hovered. I typed, sure. Emma watched me from the doorway. Who was that? She asked. Lucas. She nodded quickly. Say hi for me. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. I kissed her forehead. I'll be late tonight. Okay, she said. Drive safe. As I stepped outside, my mother's voice echoed again. A man who protects family is a real man. I straightened my shoulders. I chose silence one more time. I told myself it was strength. I didn't realize it was the first step toward losing everything. I walked to my car slowly. The sky looked normal, unfairly calm. I told myself nothing was broken yet. I believed loyalty would save me. I believed love could survive silence. I believed blood mattered more than truth. Those beliefs followed me, quiet and heavy, as I drove away, unaware they were already preparing to betray me. And I kept choosing silence, not knowing cost. I came home early that night. The house lights were on. I heard crying before I opened the door. Emma? I said. Her sob cut off. Then I heard Lucas. His voice was low. Close. It's okay, he said. I'm here. My hand froze on the handle. I pushed the door open. They stood apart too fast. Emma's eyes were red. Lucas didn't move at all. What's going on? I asked. Emma opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Lucas met my eyes. Come. Steady. She's upset. About what? I asked. Emma shook her head. Daniel, please. Please what? I said. Talk to me. Lucas sighed. You're making this bigger than it is. I laughed once. I haven't made anything yet. Emma sank onto the couch. Her hands covered her face. She didn't look at me. I stepped closer. Say it isn't true. She stayed silent. I turned to him. Lucas. He tilted his head. What? Did you touch my wife? Emma gasped. Lucas didn't blink. Yes. The word hit me like cold water. I waited for pain. It didn't come. I said, say it again. Yes, he repeated. We made a mistake. Emma cried harder. Stop. I looked at her. How long? She shook her head. I didn't plan it. That's not an answer, I said. Lucas stepped forward. Enough. I laughed again. You don't get to say that. Before I could move, the door opened behind me. My mother's voice said, Daniel. I turned. My parents stood there. My father's eyes were down. My mother looked afraid. You knew, I said. She reached for me. Listen first. I trusted you, I said. All of you. Emma whispered, I'm sorry. I pointed at her. Not now. My mother said, this cannot leave this house. Lucas crossed his arms. It will ruin everything. I stared at him. You ruined everything. My mother's voice shook. Call no one. I said, I should call the police. No, she said. You won't. My father cleared his throat, then went quiet again. I looked at him. Say something. He didn't. My mother said, if this comes out, the family name dies. I said, so does mine. She stepped closer. You're strong. You can carry this. Emma looked up. Daniel, please. I said, you chose him. She whispered, I chose weakness. Lucas said, this doesn't have to destroy us. I stepped toward him. It already did. My mother pulled a paper from her bag. Sign this. I stared at it. What is it? A statement, she said. You were angry. You scared her. Emma sobbed. I can't let you do this. My mother snapped, quiet. I felt dizzy. You want me to lie. You want us to survive, she said. I looked at my father again. If I sign, I lose everything. He finally spoke. Sometimes a man must. I laughed softly. You taught me well. The pen felt heavy. My hand shook. Emma cried, don't. Lucas watched. Silent now. I thought of every time I stayed quiet. Every time I stepped back. I thought of honor. My mother said, this ends tonight. I signed. The ink looked darker than it should. I dropped the pen. I hope it was worth it. No one answered. I walked to the door. My legs felt hollow. Emma said, I never wanted this. I said, neither did I. Outside the night felt loud. Too loud. I stood there breathing, knowing I had crossed a line I could never erase. I didn't sign because I believed them. I signed because I was trained to disappear. I woke up free but trapped, breathing air that owned. Everyone spoke about me while I stood silent inside myself. At work my manager said, Daniel, we let you go. I asked why and he avoided my eyes completely today. Rumors move faster than truth when silence signs papers alone. I texted Emma asking, can we talk, and received nothing. Days passed and her absence answered louder than any confession. Lucas sent one message saying, you did the right thing. I stared at it until my hands shook with rage. I replied nothing because silence was the only weapon allowed. At night I argued with myself like two strangers fighting. Why didn't you speak? I asked, knowing the answer already. Because you were trained to carry shame quietly, I replied. Nathan came one afternoon knocking softly like he feared walls. He whispered, everyone knows, Daniel, they're just pretending otherwise now. I said, who told you? And he sighed heavily then. Sophia knew first, he said. Emma cried to her before. I felt anger rise sharp, clean, and finally honest inside. Not explosive anger, but focused like a blade learning purpose. Nathan said, you don't deserve this, and I believed him. After he left, I met Henry Collins downtown that day. He asked calmly, why are you here, Daniel, today alone? I said, I lost everything without bars or locked doors. Henry leaned forward and said, who are you protecting now? That question landed heavier than any accusation ever thrown before. I opened my mouth and heard silence answer me back. For the first time I wondered if sacrifice was cowardice. Henry said, freedom starts when silence stops protecting liars alone. I nodded slowly, feeling something unlock behind my ribs finally. I wasn't free yet, but I stopped disappearing that moment. Henry said, we can fight, but you must stand visible. I answered, I'm tired of hiding, even if truth hurts. He nodded and replied, pain passes, silence never forgives anyone. Walking out, I felt watched by fear and hope together. My phone buzzed again, but I refused to look down. For once my future didn't belong to family demands anymore. I whispered, I'm done protecting ghosts who never protected me. The city noise felt different, less judging, more distant today. I knew consequences were coming, but fear no longer ruled. Prison had no walls, yet I had found exit signs. I texted Nathan, thank you for telling me truth today. He replied, I'm proud of you, whatever happens next, brother. I sat alone but didn't feel owned anymore by lies. My name still burned, but my spine finally straightened inside. This was not freedom yet, but it was beginning today. I promised myself never to sign my voice away again. Silence had failed me and I was finished serving it. Tomorrow I would speak, no matter who trembled from truth. For now I breathed deeply and let resolve settle in. The cage still existed, but I stopped calling home family. I walked forward knowing bars fall when men push back. That night I slept briefly without rehearsing lies for anyone. Morning would bring storms, but my ground felt firm enough. I was still accused, but no longer invisible to myself. Freedom begins internally, Henry had said, and I agreed quietly. The system caged bodies, but silence caged souls like mine. I chose differently even before courts ever listened to me. That choice burned, but it also lit paths ahead forward. I wasn't free, yet I had stopped surrendering my name. Bars or not, I reclaimed something no verdict could touch. I whispered again, this ends, and felt steady inside myself. The past still watched, but it no longer commanded me. Prison without bars taught me where chains begin and end. They begin with fear and end with consent from me. I withdrew my consent that night permanently from their lies. Whatever followed, I would face standing upright with open eyes. That decision marked the true beginning of my fight back. No bars rattled, yet something inside finally broke free there. I accepted loss but rejected erasure forever from my life. The night ended, but my silence did not rule me. I prepared for truth to knock louder next time around. This time I would open the door and stand firm. Prison existed, but I had learned escape routes inside myself. No one could sign away my voice again without me. That realization became my first real breath of earned freedom. I sat across from Henry and said, I'm ready now. He looked at me and asked, ready for what, Daniel? I answered, to stop protecting people who buried me alive. He nodded once and said, then tell me everything slowly. I said, Emma deleted messages but backups exist on cloud. Henry leaned forward. Do you have access? Yes, I said. She never changed the password. He said, then we start there today. I logged in with shaking hands. Henry said, breathe. Truth doesn't rush. I opened messages between Emma and Lucas. My chest tightened but my voice stayed calm. Henry asked, dates line up? I said, every lie has a timestamp. He replied, good. Save everything. I said, there are recordings too. Henry raised his brow. From where? Home security audio, I said. You're serious? He asked. I never checked before, I replied. He said, play one. Lucas's voice filled the room. Emma's followed, soft and broken. Henry stopped it quickly. That's enough, he said. I whispered, I stayed silent for this. Henry said, not anymore. That afternoon Emma visited me. She sat down and said, you look different. I said, I finally feel present. She said, Daniel, I need you quiet. I asked, one last time? She nodded. For everyone. I said, you mean for you? She looked down. I loved you. I asked, enough to erase me? She said, in my own way. I laughed softly. Love doesn't ask for life sentences. She cried. I was scared. So was I said. She reached out. We can survive this. I pulled back. You already chose survival. She whispered, Lucas is falling apart. I said, truth does that. She asked, will you stop? I answered, no. She stood quickly. Your parents are begging. I said, they raised me to disappear. She said, they'll never forgive you. I replied, I forgave myself instead. She stared shocked. I added, that's new for me. After she left, Henry called. Lucas has been suspended, he said. I replied, that was fast. Images crack when pressure arrives, Henry said. I felt fear climb my spine. I also felt taller. My mother called that night. She said, you're destroying us. I answered, I'm stopping the destruction. My father took the phone. Come home, he said. I already did, I replied. My mother cried. Think of our name. I said, think of your son. She went quiet. I hung up without apology. Later Henry asked, how do you feel? I said, terrified and steady. He smiled. That's courage. I shook my head. It's clarity. I watched news scroll on my phone. Lucas avoided cameras. Friends stopped defending him. I didn't smile. I didn't shout. I realized revenge wasn't noise. It wasn't fists or curses. It was standing still while truth moved. I told Henry, I won't chase outcomes. He replied, you don't need to. Truth walks alone, I said. He nodded. And it doesn't look back. That night I slept deeply. Fear sat nearby but didn't rule me. For the first time I chose myself. I stood when the judge said, you may speak. My voice shook but I said, I was silent once. I paused and added, I won't be again. Lucas whispered, Daniel, don't. I looked at him and said, you already did. The judge asked, proceed. I said, every sentence feels like glass leaving my chest. No one interrupted me this time. The prosecutor said, we submit the messages. Lucas said, they're fake. I said, they're dated. Emma covered her mouth. She whispered, please stop. I replied, truth doesn't stop. Henry nodded at me. I said, there are recordings. Lucas stood. That's illegal. Henry said, they're admissible. The audio played. Emma cried loudly. Lucas stared at the floor. My mother sobbed behind me. She said, this is humiliating. I turned and asked, for who? She whispered, for us. That hurt more than anything else. The judge said, order. I said, I carried lies for honor. I added, they crushed me. Lucas shouted, I made a mistake. I asked, one mistake or many? He said, I was weak. I answered, you were selfish. Emma stood suddenly. I loved him, she cried. The room went silent. I said, you loved protection. She screamed, I was scared. So was I replied. The judge asked, is there more? Henry said, financial transfers. Lucas said, I didn't force him. I said, you let me bleed. My father lowered his head. I didn't look at him again. The judge read quietly for minutes. Each second burned. Finally he said, charges shift. I breathed once. He said, Daniel Wright is cleared. My knees almost failed. Emma gasped. Lucas whispered, no. The judge continued, Lucas Wright will remain. Lucas shouted, this isn't fair. I said, neither was silence. My mother cried louder. She said, our name is ruined. I whispered, mine survived. Emma collapsed into her chair. Her eyes found mine. I felt nothing. The judge said, court adjourned. The gavel fell. Outside Henry said, you did well. I replied, I just told truth. Reporters shouted questions. I walked past them. Lucas was led away. He didn't look back. Emma stood alone. She said, I lost everything. I answered, so did I. She asked, do you feel better? I said, I feel finished. My mother reached for me. I stepped away. She said, we needed you. I replied, you used me. The hallway felt long. I kept moving. Henry asked, joy? I shook my head. I said, release. He nodded. Karma didn't scream. It closed doors. I sat on the courthouse steps. My chest felt empty clean. I whispered, it's over. No one argued. I stood and walked forward. I left the courthouse and my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Everyone wanted something from me now. My mother said, come home. Let's fix this. My father said, enough damage has been done. Lucas said, I was weak, Daniel. I lost myself. Emma didn't call. She wrote. The letter waited on my table like a dare. I sat down and said out loud, one time. I read every word slowly. She wrote, I never stopped loving you. She wrote, I panicked. She wrote, please don't end us like this. I folded the paper and said, love doesn't beg after verdicts. I lit a match and watched the words disappear. The smoke felt lighter than forgiveness. Lucas stood outside my building that evening. He said, I didn't think it would go this far. I asked, how far did you think betrayal goes? He said, I hated myself. I replied, you didn't hate yourself enough to stop. He looked down. Can you forgive me? I answered, I already moved past you. That's worse, he said. It's freedom, I replied. My parents came the next day. My mother cried. People are talking. I said, they always were. She said, we raised you better. I answered, you raised me to disappear. My father said, family is family. I replied, truth is truth. Silence filled the room and didn't scare me. I packed boxes that night. I said to myself, this is resignation. Not from work but from a life that never fit. At the office I said, I'm leaving. My manager asked, are you sure? I replied, for the first time yes. Outside, Olivia waited with coffee. She said, you look calm. I said, I am. She smiled. That's clarity. I asked, what if they never stop blaming me? She answered, then keep walking. I said, I don't want to be bitter. She replied, then don't confuse bitterness with boundaries. I thought about revenge and felt nothing. I said, I don't hate them. Olivia nodded. That's healing. I went home alone that night. No letters. No knocks. Just quiet that felt earned. I whispered, freedom isn't winning. I whispered, it's leaving. The past still existed but it no longer owned me. I didn't forgive them. I released myself. Regret had arrived for them too late. Peace arrived for me right on time. I sat quietly and let memories pass without chasing them. I said, I survived. The room answered with calm. My phone buzzed again and I ignored it. I told myself, not today. For once, urgency didn't own me. I thought about Emma's voice and felt distance. I said, that chapter is closed. The words stayed solid. I remembered signing papers and losing myself. I said, never again. The promise felt clean. I walked outside and felt air on my face. I said, I choose forward. Nothing argued back. I understood something simple at last. Freedom isn't loud justice. It's quiet separation. I no longer waited for apologies. I no longer needed understanding. I had clarity and it was enough. I closed the door behind me and didn't look back. I said, this is my life. The silence agreed. I accepted loss without carrying shame. I accepted endings without begging. I accepted myself without conditions. That was freedom. That was peace. That was enough. I breathed once more and felt steady. I knew tomorrow would ask questions. I knew I would answer honestly. No more silence. No more sacrifice. Only truth. I stood by the window and watched lights fade. I said, I am free. The words stayed. I didn't smile but I didn't ache. I rested in certainty. That was victory. I turned off the lights and lay down. Sleep came quietly. I welcomed it. Tomorrow belonged to me alone. No one else decided anymore. I closed my eyes without fear. That mattered. I whispered my name and kept it. I breathed peace and held it carefully. This was my ending and beginning. I chose myself finally. The chain was gone. I stepped forward alone. Nothing followed me. I accepted that. It felt right. I rested. I lived. That mattered deeply. To me alone. Always. Finally. Free. At last. I am. Here. I speak to you now because my story is finished. I lost my marriage, my family, and my name. I gained myself, and that matters more. I moved to a new city. No one knows my history here. When people ask, I say, I'm Daniel. That's enough now. I wake up without fear. I sleep without rehearsing lies. Silence feels different when it isn't forced. Sometimes I talk to the man I was. I say, you did what you knew. I say, you were taught wrong. I forgive him quietly. I don't forgive them. I don't need to. Distance does the work forgiveness once promised. I remember signing my freedom away. I remember believing pain proved loyalty. I was wrong. I tell myself, never again. Those words stay firm. I walk streets without watching shadows. I eat meals without waiting for accusations. Peace shows up in small ways. People here speak honestly. When they don't, I leave. That choice is mine now. I sacrificed my freedom for family honor once. I won't repeat that mistake. Honor that needs silence is an honor. Truth cost me everything. It also returned me to myself. Some nights memories knock. I don't answer. They fade. I live simply. I work quietly. I breathe fully. When fear whispers, I reply, I survived. When guilt whispers, I say, I learned. I don't chase happiness. I build steadiness. It lasts longer. I know who I am now. I know what I won't carry again. If you're listening, hear this. Silence is not strength. Sacrifice without love is erasure. I lost everything that owned me. I kept everything that mattered. This is not revenge. This is release. I choose truth. I choose myself. That choice feels like peace. I remember Olivia's voice sometimes. She said, clarity is quiet. I repeat that when days feel heavy. I talk to myself while cooking. I say, slow down. I say, you're safe. No one here asks about my past. That gift still surprises me. I don't correct it. I meet people who don't need my sacrifice. They say, just be here. I listen. When mistakes happen, I admit them. Nothing explodes. Nothing collapses. I learned pain isn't proof of love. I learned love doesn't demand prisons. I look at my hands and see scars. They don't scare me. They remind me. I once believed freedom was selfish. Now I know erasure is. If my family called today, I would answer calmly. I would say, I hope you're well. I would not return. That boundary feels kind. It also feels final. I don't perform goodness anymore. I practice honesty. I wake up, work, eat, rest. No drama follows me home. That is luxury. I forgive myself again when doubt returns. I say, you escaped. That matters. If you're still listening, take this. Truth costs less than silence. Always. I didn't win. I survived. Survival changed me. This man writing now is lighter. He stands straighter. He breathes deeper. I lost everything once. I won't lose myself again. That promise holds. I end here. Peace stays. I walk forward alone but steady now. Nothing pulls me backward. I finally trust my steps. That trust is home. I stay. I live. I choose tomorrow. Quietly. Freely. Without chains. I am enough now. Always for me.